Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel Data Tech. I'm your host Anand Kumar. In this video, we are going to discuss about AWS Athena. So let's kick off by understanding what exactly is Athena. Amazon Athena is an interactive query service that make it easy to analyze data in S3 and other federated data sources using SQL. And now we can also run interactive data analytics using Apache Spark in Athena. Both Athena SQL and Apache Spark are serverless, so we need not to worry about infrastructure. And if we think about its usage, it's primarily for the ad hoc request. Or we can say that when we need fast answers from our data, AWS Athena is our way to go. Now let's look how it works. So as we can see in the image, Athena integrates with AWS Glue and S3 out of the box. So we don't have to set up any specific connection with the Glue or S3. But for other federated data sources, we need to set up connections. And if you look at on the right side, we see two boxes, one for Pyspark and the other one is for the SQL. And they both are under a workgroup. So workgroup is it's a concept in Athena, which is to segregate the query history executions by users, teams, or application under an AWS account. So by default, there is a workgroup named primary. So our SQL editors is linked to that. But for Pyspark, we need to create a new workgroup. And other thing which we can see in our picture, there's that for the output, or we can say the query output of Amazon Athena, we need to set up an S3 bucket. Now that we have the understanding of the fundamentals of Athena, let's move on to some practical experience. So the Athena homepage provides immediate access to both interactive and interactive Pyspark options. So if you see query your data, that's the interactive SQL, and analyze your data is your interactive Pyspark. We will begin with the SQL, and eventually we will go to the Pyspark too. So we'll start with the with SQL. So click on launch your query editor. So it will open a query editor for us. So the first thing we will do, we will set up the query output to an S3 bucket. Otherwise, all the queries which we will run will give the error. So to do that, click on settings, click on manage, and for the first option, we need to browse for the S3 bucket where I put the output of our query. So click on browse, and I have a bucket named Data Tech Athena output. I'll select that. It's an empty bucket. Let me show you. If we go to our S3, click on this bucket, it is empty. There is nothing. So select that bucket, click on choose, and save it. Okay. And now we'll go back to the editor. And if you look on the left side in the data sources and databases and tables. So in data source, we see AWS Data Catalog. That's the default one. And because of, as we discussed, Athena integrates with AWS Glue out of the box. So that's why you see AWS Data Catalog. But for the database and tables, we don't see anything. That's because if we go to our Glue service, let me go there. And if we click on database, so there is no database. So basically there is no database exist in Glue, and because of that, we don't see any database and tables here. So let's create a database in Glue and crawl the data in S3 so that we have a database and table in Athena. Okay, let's start with creating a database. So we'll first add a database. So we'll name it, let's name it sales DB. because the data we are crawling is for the sales data. So click on create database. So database is created now. So next is we will use the crawler. So I already have a sales crawler. Let me rerun this. And crawler takes a couple of minutes. So for the meantime, I'll pause my video. The execution of crawler has finished. Let's check the table. Great, table has been generated. As we have previously discussed, Glue integrates with Athena out of the box. So due to that, this table and this database should be readily available within Athena. So let's go to Athena. Within Athena, like in the query editor, if I see now the database is the sales DB and the table name is the sales data tech demo. If sometime like you need to click on the refresh just to automate that, here it automatically refresh too, but sometime we need to click on this button. Now we will execute a straightforward query to observe that the output bucket we set up in S3, what goes into it. So let's run a simple query. We will do a select star from the database name. Okay, let me remove the extra brackets or extra quotes here. Okay, dot the table name, we will limit it to 10. Click on run. Okay, so query is completed and we can see there are 10 rows which have the outcome from the sales table. Now let's go to the S3 bucket. So if you remember, this is our bucket which we set up for Athena output. So if we click on this, okay, we don't see anything. Let's refresh this. Okay, click on again. So it's created like a folder, like a structure. If you see that, like it started with the year, like we can see here, like it is unsaved because we haven't saved it. If you look at this, like this query is not saved. So it's under unsaved, year, month, then we go for a date. And here we see two things. One is a CSV file and the other one is the metadata. Let's download the CSV file. Let's go here and click on download. Okay, awesome. I'll go to my downloads and open the CSV just to see what exactly goes there, or just to show you guys. It should contain only those 10 records. If I this, yes. So whatever query we run, the output will get stored there, and it's stored in the structure which we saw, like it is in a partition format, or I'll say like it created a folders and subfolders. Start with a month, year, month, date, and the output. So if we run this again, we will see, if we go back here, for example, currently we see there are two files. One is CSV and CSV metadata, but let's see if we rerun this, it will generate the file again. Okay, this is done. Output is remain same. If we go here and click on refresh, so you can see now we have 4 files here. So number of times we run any query here, that gets stored there. So far we learn within Athena SQL editor that it is possible to run query directly on the S3 data, which is like a very useful for ad hoc kind of request, where like the leadership or the business want like fast answers. In those cases, like Athena SQL editor can be used. Now let's explore how we can execute Pyspark interactively. So let's click on this hamburger, select the notebook editor. So the query editor is for the SQL and notebook editor is for the Pyspark. If we click on notebook editor, so we will get, oh, no valid work group found. And as we discussed, like by default, there is one work group when we start the Athena, that is primary, and it is connected with SQL. So for Pyspark, we need to create a new work group. Click on create work group. Let's give it a name. We'll name it Pyspark work group. Okay, we'll keep optional options, like we won't give any description. And then it asks for the analytical engine we want, so we want Pyspark, so we'll select this. But if you want, like, you don't want to use the primary work group, and if you remember, the work group is basically to segregates the like users and teams separately. Like for example, if we have two teams, one is for production, for example, one is sales, other is marketing, and we want to give them two different, we want to make sure like sales team queries remain intact in one place. For that, we can create one group, and same goes for marketing. In that case, we can use Athena, but here we are demonstrating how to create an Apache Spark interactively. So we'll select Apache Spark, the engine, and we will also turn on an example notebook. So in this video, we're going to look into this example notebook to understand like how Pyspark work interactively. Rest of the things we will keep it same. Click on create group, create work group. Okay, awesome. So the work group is created. Now we'll go to this work group. Okay, and we'll select this notebook, and this is the example notebook, which is already available when you create a workbook. It's not always like we need to check that option. And here you see one thing, like the default DAUs are 20, which is quite high. So we can do one thing, we can click here and reduce it to 4. The reason being is like Athena is not free. We pay for the amount of we are using, or we can say like the amount of time we are interacting with it. So we don't want any high bills for us, even when we are doing a demo or we are learning. In those cases, like just keep it to 4. Like you can't, this minimum could be, I think, 3. Like you can't drop it to 2 or 1. It has to more than 3. So that's why we selected 4, save it. And now very quickly, we will go to this interactive notebook. Okay. And the other thing, the meantime it's loading, I just want to show you this work group thing. So you see here Pyspark work group, and when we go to the SQL editor, the primary will be the work group. So in this, basically what's going on, I'll give you a high level idea like what's happening here, so you will understand. So in this one, basically we are reading a public data set stored in one of the, like a public data set stored in the AWS. After that, we are just like, this is the location, like the path of the data set. Then we are reading it using spark.read.format, and it's a Parquet file, so we are reading as Parquet. Rest of the things we pretty like straightforward. We printing whether read is complete. After that, we are simply doing a group by and show the count. Then we are printing the output. We can skip that if you don't want to print. And after that, what we are doing, we are simply overwriting this to a bucket. So that if, for example, if you see, we see a bucket here, if this bucket, and if we look into our S3, this bucket does not exist. If we go here, we don't see that bucket. But once we run this bucket will create. And the important thing is like as we do in Spark, like we can convert our data frame into a view. And after that, we can run our Spark SQL on that. And the good thing about it, like if we create a table or database out of using this Spark SQL, that will pop up in our Athena SQL editor. So we'll look into that one by one. So let's read the data. Let's read the file first. We'll run this. Every cell will take some time depending on like what we are doing here. It's not a very big file, so it should not take long. So basically two things, read Parquet file complete. That was our print statement, and that makes sure like we are able to read it. After that, we will do a group by vendor ID and passenger count and print that. And it should not long too, because as I mentioned, like it's not a very heavy table, and we are just reading one month of yellow trip data Parquet file, not too much, too many things. So you can see we are able to group by vendor ID, passenger count, and do the and do a like aggregate count on that. Okay, that's our part. So we'll skip this. Like if you want to print, we can do that, but we're not going to do it. We will simply write back that data to S3. So if we click this, and when I say write back, so that data is, if you look at this, so we created an aggregated data frame here from the first data frame where we read the Pyspark, which we are simply doing an aggregation on count by group on vendor ID and the passenger count. Okay, and we are using that to write it to the bucket and naming it as a select taxi, like in the select taxi folder. Okay, let's run this. Once this is complete, we will go to our S3, and there we will see a new bucket will be created with this name, and it should have a file in it. Okay, write to S3 is complete. Let's go to S3, click on refresh, and awesome. So we see the bucket name which we mentioned in our query. Like, so you can see that we can seamlessly integrate with S3 too. So we click here, we go into select, and this will have that Parquet, the CSV file here. So it created basically a Hive metastore in S3 using this Spark. Okay, awesome. So once that is done, let's do here what we do. We will create using our like the initial data frame of temporary view, and on this temporary view or temporary table, we will simply do again an aggregation on location ID, where we simply doing a aggregation of total amount and have a simple basic filter. So very straightforward, like nothing very complex. We selecting the location ID, doing a sum on total account, giving in an aliases where the location ID is less than 25, and group by this and order by this. So basically, if we run this, and after that we are printing. If we run this, is basically it will create a temporary view. On that temporary view, it will run this SQL and present the show. So whatever is created in the temporary view, it will stays active until this like it stays active for this session only. Okay, so you can see that we got location ID and the sum of total amount. Now if we wanna like whatever we have done in our Pyspark interactively, we want to store it back to our data catalog, or you can say to where we can access in our SQL editor. So what we can do, we can simply create a database, and after that so if you see here, we create a database, Spark demo database, and we will add a table to that. So doing these will create, if we go back one second to Athena one more time, I just want to give you the perspective what will happen. So if we expand this, so currently if you look at that, we have only one database, okay, and we have only one table in this database. By running this section, sorry, this one, we will create a new database, Spark demo database, and that will, you will see that here in the drop down. And the same thing after that, like whatever table we create in it, it will be here, and those data set and table will be stored in the S3. So basically it goes back to our initial conversation, like Athena interact with Glue and S3 out of the box. So whatever table and database we are creating, that will be stored in S3, and from there Athena is able to query that data. So let's run this very quickly. It should not take long because we just creating a database if it does not exist, and after that we are printing the database names. And here you can see SalesDB, even SalesDB is available for Pyspark. In query editor, if we go click on refresh, and you will find all three databases. So this is a new database which we created. SalesDB already exists, and default is, if for example here, if we haven't created this database for this Spark session, there is a default database already exists there, but we created it. So that's, you can see we have all the three databases here. And same thing, if we do a spark.sql show databases, whatever is in this editor, like on the SQL side, we can access in our Pyspark too. And then finally, we will just create a table. Let me do this, run this. And if you see here, we basically using this database and writing a, our database, like the aggregated, this database as a table here. Okay, and it is named as select taxi table. If we go to our editor and just click on refresh, you will find. In this video, we learned how Athena can be used to do interactive query via SQL or Pyspark. Whether you are a data analyst or business analyst or even data engineers, Athena serverless querying capabilities can be very helpful in any ad hoc scenarios. Before you go, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, stay curious,